Here's to his loving word, come unto me. Weary, heavy laden, there is sweet rest for thee. Trust in his promises, faithful and sure. Lean upon the Savior, and thy soul is secure. Where he leads, I follow. Follow the way. Where he leads, I follow. Follow Jesus every day. All right, any selections? 290. All right. Tell me, you will have to play me a bar or two of that, I think.
Well, we don't know if that's okay. We'll do it something.
All right.
It's good words.
Yeah. What's that sound like? Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Beautiful words.
Yeah.
About
You're right. All right.
343.
Which one?
343.
343.
You know that one?
Okay, I would not be tonight. When pains of death seized on my soul,
Jesus on the cross, the people crying, looking on a man would think it's such tragedy. But what this world could not see was when they nailed him to that tree. It would break the chains of sin and set men free. Thorns of hate were growing wildly, and the sorrow they had caused was plain to see. But when the flood came streaming down that coast where my Jesus bled and died, it started blossom of forgiveness, going
Doug has a testimony for us tonight.
Probably a surprise, but anyway, I don't even know where to even begin. It's been a while, and the bottom line is I've been disobedient to the Lord. He's asked me to do things that I I look at it and I turn and I do it my own way. And then I turn around and I ask him why this happened the way it happened. And I've been doing this for a while. And he's been giving me warning signs. And I ain't been picking up on them. Well, it's like this song I sang here, what, a month ago, and Joshua made a comment, where'd that come from? Well, it came from me. That didn't come from the Lord. So, you know, I've taken it upon myself to do things. I don't know, I've always been a perfectionist. It's hard to let go. And something happened here recent. And I go home and I fret, I can't sleep. And I ask the Lord, you know, what's going on? Why am I this way? Why am I? There's no peace at all. And this morning, I go out to my truck, and I had to move my truck early, and it was plumb on the other side of the building, but I go out and listen to Bot Radio every morning. And I get out there, and the Lord answers me. The guy was talking 1 Timothy, and he was talking about how people are disobedient and they don't listen to the Lord and they start taking things upon themselves and the Lord turns them over. So they learn not to blaspheme. That's what he done. He turned me over. And for the last 3 or 4 days, I have had no peace, no sleep. And once I heard this, I said, that's me. That's me. Dead out. So I started asking the Lord to forgive me. And actually thanking him for caring enough about me that he would do that. And I had a peace come about me that I hadn't felt in a while.
Amen.
And I just had to share that.
Amen. God bless you.
We need to all be obedient. I'm a slow learner.
Well, I appreciate that testimony. It's not always easy to get up and admit things, you know, that we're going through. And a lot of us like to make it look like things just going rosy. And do I have another one? No.
She can have this one.
I'm trying to save trees. After reading all this destruction in Revelation, I decided to become a tree hugger. No, I better not say that. I'll get in trouble. We'll be in chapter 17. You know, Polly and I are going to be gone for the next 2 Sundays and 2 Wednesday nights. So we're covet your prayers too while we're gone, but it may be just hard for me to wipe the smile off my face because I'm just going to be such a time of joy and happiness. Polly got to retire, so this is kind of a retirement trip, and we're going to go hear some gospel music. It's just, when you hear those groups, it's just unbelievable. I mean, you hear really good groups, but when you hear these groups, like Greater Vision and Triumphant, the Booth Brothers and Collinsworth and Liberty Quartet and all these different groups, you know, and it is just, I mean, being in a place like that and to hear music like that is just going to be so good. So I know you're not going to feel sorry for it. But, and then like on Sunday morning, the guy that's giving the devotion is Chris Allman, which he's the lead singer for Greater Vision. And he had left that group at one time to go into the ministry. He was in the ministry for several years, and then he felt called to go back into singing again. And I'll tell you what, he'll bless your heart. So anyway, we'll get into this lesson tonight. Hopefully we'll get done with chapter 17, and then when we come back, we'll start up with 18. And remember, we said at the end of 16, Christ returns, and you know, that's Battle Armageddon. He returns to set up the kingdom. Now we go back in time, kind of chronologically go back, and God is going to show us what he was doing to this false religion and the false world system in these judgments. So these bowl judgments, the trumpet judgments, the vial judgments, all these things are going to play into and show what happened to these systems. Tonight in chapter 17, we look at the spiritual side, we look at the false religion. A few weeks back we went into Genesis, showed how that when it talks in verse 5 about Mystery Babylon and about how all these false religions got their start in Babel. Remember, with the Tower of Babel. And then when God confused the languages, these men went throughout the whole world and they took these false religions with them. And we went back in Genesis also, we looked at how at the fall, how that man's relationship to God, man's desire to worship was natural and innate, but it became skewed and not the way it should be towards God. It looked for other things to fill this void that sin had come and taken the place. So tonight we're going to see an explanation of things. I'm going to go to verse 1 and read 1 through 5 just to kind of get you back where we were at. And it said, "And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, and with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was written the name, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the whole earth. And then in verse 6, we'll continue, it says, And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and the beast that carrieth her, which had the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell upon the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. You know, when you look at this in verse 6, it talks about in the first few verses, you know, about this false religion. And we talked about how in the end time, in that last 7 years, finally, the world is going to get to the place, and it's going to have perfect setup for these false religions, for this one ecumenical church. Somehow, they're going to be able to have, and there have been councils of churches forever. You know, it seemed like ever since I can remember, back in for years, that have tried to unite the churches, to unite all the different religions into one. There is a feeling among those people, and they will say that we are all inwardly of the same religion or of the same faith, or we are all inwardly the same. We just need to come back to our origins. Well, what's that talking about? That's talking about Babylon. It's talking about the very beginning of false religions, where they were all one. They all came together with a common purpose. God said, what you're doing is wrong. You're worshiping a false God. You're supposed to worship me. You have evil in your heart to do wrong. They built this tower, and God confused their language and scattered it. They're trying to come back. The whole world is desperately trying to reunite under some kind of a system, a faith, a religion, something to bring people together into oneness again. And there's all kinds of councils. There are people that are continually having these councils, and they'll say, you know, what we need to do is to bring all these religions together, the Russian Orthodox, the Roman Catholic, the Greek Orthodox, the Church of England. All of these at times past have had to try to unite. And that's an amazing feat to try to get just those to unite. But can you imagine trying to unite Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, and into that group? And then add evangelical Christians into that group. Well, it's never worked. It's been tried and tried. They've done so many things, and they'll say, look, you know, we need to just to come together as one. We need to be of one faith. Well, what that does is they want you to take something out of what you believe and compromise in order to make it with another faith. Mother Teresa, a lot of people just think of her as a saint and a wonderful woman in her own book. She says, you know, whatever men do to bring themselves to their God, to make themselves a better Christian, a better Hindu, a better Buddhist, then that's good. How can you say that? As a Christian, could you say that? If the best thing for you is to become a better, you know, if you're a Buddhist and to worship your God and be a better Buddhist, no, you'll go to hell if you do that. But yet, that is what they're going to strive for. They'll finally come to the place during this time, this 7 years, first 3.5 years of the tribulation, this false church, and that's what it's talking about here, under this mystery Babylon. There's going to be this mystery, this thing that entices people, and this feeling of something that just is, that they want to know more about, and an uneasy, but it's a pulling and a tugging at people's hearts and their consciences to bring them into this. It's not, you know, is there any mystery in Christ? I mean, it says if you'll believe in Him, if you'll believe on what He did at Calvary as the atoning work for your sin, by faith believing and coming to Him, repenting and turning, then you'll be saved. That's pretty simple. That's not a mystery. In Christ, it's all open, and but you know, they want all these things to happen. It says in verse 6 that this woman, this harlot, this false church, it says it was drunken with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Now, a lot of people say the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs is two different things. Some of them say the blood of the saints are the Old Testament, or they'll say that it's the people before the rapture, and the blood of the martyrs are those that are, I think it's talking about the same group. It's talking about people of faith. And you can make that distinction if you want to. You know, if you want to say that's Old Testament saints, or it's one group or another. And then the other one, the martyrs, are those that are killed during the time of the tribulation. You know, you could say that, but it just says that this false religion is drunk with their blood. In other words, there is an enticement and just an overwhelming feeling of accomplishment and joy that they have done something for their God, for their religion, for their way of life by killing these innocent Christians and probably Jews and anybody that doesn't believe the way that they do. But particularly it says for the blood of the saints in there. And it says, when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Now, what John's looking at, can you imagine in this vision, seeing this harlot, this great, and this in probably very finely decked out, except for all these different pearls and all the different colors and, you know, in fine array, sitting on this beast, and he's wondering, you know, well, what has one got to do with the other? After all these things that John has seen, you know, he sees this and he's kind of wondering in himself. He's thinking, you know, he's confused by what he's seeing, and he doesn't know completely what this is doing on this beast and how they have a relationship. And so it says in verse 7, the angel said unto me, why do you marvel? I'm going to tell you the mystery of the woman. So he says, you know, don't worry about it, John. I'm going to tell you this mystery. I'm going to explain it to you. This angel, remember one that had one of the 7 vials and poured it out, came, brought John, took him into the wilderness, showing him this vision. And he says, John, don't worry about it because I'm going to explain it to you. And the beast that carrieth her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition or destruction. And they will dwell on the earth, shall wonder, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and it is. You think about this. He says, you know, this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, we've seen this beast before. We've seen it in Daniel. We've seen it back in chapter 13. It's been explained who it was and what it's about. But in this instance, you know, he sees this beast, this world government. He sees the Antichrist represented by this beast. And he sees this harlot, this false religion sitting on there. And he's thinking, you know, what are they doing together and what's going on? He says, remember in verse 8 that this beast that you saw was and is not and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. What's it talking about? Just like it's going to say in a little bit, it's going to say that it was and is not and yet is. Talking about a few chapters back. Remember when it talked about Antichrist being killed, or maybe a fake death and fake resurrection? He was not for a while, then he is. Well, that's what happens here. Because of his death and his fake resurrection, and you notice it says there that he shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. What that tells us is that at the point in time, at that 3.5 years, for 3.5 years, that false religion, that one world church is going to be reigning and having a wonderful time, amassing great wealth, bringing all these nations together in faith and in harmony, in peace. The thing that the United Nations was founded to do, it's finally going to do. But it's not going to be under the United Nations, it's going to be under this false religion. Well, at the 3.5 years, remember, that's when he's killed, when he does the resurrection, the false prophet raises him up. He goes into the temple, declares himself to be God. And he says he ascendeth out of the bottomless pit. At that time, up until that time, Antichrist is there. He's present. He's a marvelous speaker, an orator, a charismatic person. He has a way about presenting himself that's fascinating to people. But at this time, during that resurrection, he's going to be empowered and embodied by a demon out of hell, out of the bottomless pit. And at that time, he's going to perform great and marvelous works and miracles. That men, it's just going to be astounding men. And I say when they look at him, they're just going to be in wonder and awe at the things that he does, the things that he says, and the ability that he has over other men. And then in verse 9 he says, here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. In other words, 7 heads. What did we say in the beginning right here? Remember? Those represent, this beast is a representative of all the nations. It's a conglomeration of all the nations. These 7 heads that the 10 horns are going to be on are 7 kingdoms that came from the past. That's the ones we talked about: Assyria, Egypt, all these world-dominating, Babylon, Medo-Persians, Greeks, the Romans, and then this false one, and then, there'll be another false one. They'll say an 8th one eventually. But he says it's 7 mountains. If you go into Habakkuk, into Jeremiah, into Isaiah, there are places there where it identifies kings as mountains. So it's not something that's uncommon to the Scripture. But he's saying that where these 10 kings are going to arise from are going to be from this same deal. All these false religions that went out into the world from Babel, spread out through the world, are going to come back. All their babies are going to come back into to this mother Babylon. All these false religions, all these things, all these nations are going to come, and they're going to be part of this kingdom. And these 10 kings, these 10 heads, represent 10 kings that are going to be under the Antichrist. Antichrist is going to have 10 kings. It's interesting when you go into some of the writings from the United Nations, and before that the League of Nations, from different councils and groups that have been brought together to form a one world government, what they all come up with, it's amazing. 10 different areas. They have geographic areas, 10 different areas, that all of these ones that say if you're going to have a one world government, you need to have 10 areas. And it's just been recently as in the 1990s, that the United Nations, in their plan to unite, do away with all the nations of the world, to bring together 10 areas, 10 districts of the world, and there was going to be 10 heads over that. Well, guess what? That's what Antichrist is going to do. He's going to have these 10 kings, and during this short time, it says they're going to be for a short time, and he's going to be for a short time. If you notice in a little bit when we read, it's going to say just for a while, not for a long time. It's not going to be for centuries. It's not going to be for decades. It's just going to be over 3.5 or 7 years, something like that. And then their reign and their kingdom is going to be over. In verse 10 it says, and go back to this verse 9, a lot of people will try to claim that this is Rome, because Rome is the city of what? 7 hills. And they said it's this word for mountains is the same thing that Christ used back in Matthew, and he said he was on a hill. And so it can be used as a hill or a mountain, but it says, so a lot of people will say, well, this is talking about Rome. I think Roman Catholicism is going to be entwined in this, but it's not going to be the main player. It'll be part of the Roman Empire, revived Roman Empire, that'll be involved in this. But it keeps saying Babylon. And isn't it interesting, back just a few years ago, what was Saddam Hussein doing? He was rebuilding the city of Babylon. He was rebuilding Babylon. When our troops went over there, they found some magnificent things in that city. It's a wonderful place. Matter of fact, historians have said it's the crossroads for many continents. It's a crossroads for Europe, for Asia, for Africa. All of them kind of ascend right there. Well, what's right in the middle of it? Israel. Right over here is Israel. Right over here is the city of Babylon. What does it have? It has the Tigris-Euphrates River. It's got a place with abundant and overflowing oil reserves. It's got all the wealth that you could think of. You know, the reason Saddam Hussein was able to do that and to begin to rebuild it was because of all the oil. And it's in a place of great importance. So I think it's actually going to be, the city will be rebuilt, but it only represents what it says Babylon. It's only it's representative of this whole false religion and this whole false government. Remember when Nimrod came, he had the false religion, but he also had the one world government. They were all under him. They were all under his rule. And what happened? It all split apart. Well, guess what? It's all going to come back together. And it's going to be centered around the actual place of a rebuilt Babylon. In verse 10 it says, there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, one is, the other is not yet come, and when he comes, he will continue a short space. In other words, this 7th one, this last one, is going to be Antichrist. And you notice it says he's going to only be there for a short time. He's not going to be there for a long time. He thinks that he's going to set up one world government, one world religion, worshiping him. He will be God. He will set his throne up and everybody will worship him. But he said, nope, it's only going to be for a short time. Verse 11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition or destruction. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdoms as of yet, but receive their power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Who's going to give them the power? He says 1 hour with the beast, a short time, a short space. You notice how this is all talking about his kingdom's not going to last very long. Who are these kings, these 10 kings under? They're all under the beast. It says, you know, that, and the beast that was and is not, he is the 8th. How is he the 8th when there's only 7? Well, because he died, he was not, he came back, he's the 8th. So there's only 7, but he counts for 2, so it's 8. How do you like that new math? This is old math. In verse 13 it says, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. You know, you look at that, and he says that his power is only going to be for a short time. They're only going to last for an hour. And of all things, he's going to make war with the Lamb. Now that is a career-ending decision right there. I had a guy one time told me something. I was his boss, and I said, that is a career-ending decision. You might as well clean out your desk and leave. Well, this is not only a career-ending decision, but it's a life-ending decision, because when you make war with the Lamb, he says, made war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is King, he is Lord of lords and King of kings. You notice, talk about all these kings. What does it say about Jesus Christ? He's King of kings. Now, there might be call themselves kings and everything, but he is the only king. Only the Lamb, only Jesus Christ can claim to be the king. He is the only legitimate king. Everybody else is not in this. And he says, they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. When you look at that and you think about it, it says the ones that are with him. When we go back, and we're not going to get into this tonight, we get in chapter 20 and 21, when we see Christ coming back, who's going to be with him? The ones that are called, chosen, and faithful. He says, I'm going to bring my church back with me. Who is he contrasting that to? To the false religion, to the false bride, to the false church, to the harlot. He says, these are called and chosen and faithful. You know, what do you want from people? You want people to be faithful, don't you? And you think about it, he says, I called them, I chose every one of them. And he says, and when they were called and chosen from that point on, they remained faithful. And he says in verse 15, and we're going to wrap it up on that one, he says, well, actually, we're going to do 15, then we're going to do 18. He says, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these will hate the whore, and make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Every word of God is going to be fulfilled. What he's saying is that at one point, into the 3.5 year point, they're going to turn against this false religion. Well, who's leading them? The false prophet. But he's a smart guy. He says, I'm staying with the Antichrist. We're going to start our own religion. They're going to dump that, and all the ones that were supporting her. Remember, it says that she sits upon the beast and he carries her. In other words, the beast is the one that's moving it and making it go and everything. He says, you know, at that time they're going to turn against her. They're going to say, you know, no more. We're going to form our own religion. We're going to worship Antichrist. And from that point on, they'll take everything she's got. Why is that? For 3.5 years, he used this false religion to draw all these people together. Once he's got them all together, and they become filthy rich, then he changes everything and says, I'm taking all of that for myself. I probably needs that to maintain his kingdom and all the things that he's got going. But he said, you can worship me, you can trust me, and when they see the miracles that he performs, they will. And they'll turn and they'll worship. So, anyway, in a few weeks, couple of weeks when we come back, we're going to take up chapter 18, and that is showing the destruction of the world empire and the beast. So that whole chapter is talking about, where this one was talking about the spiritual part, the other one talked about the kingdoms and the material part.
All right, so you're going to be going this coming Sunday and next Sunday and Wednesday night, or 2 Wednesday nights. Fun, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I hope you have a great time. All right, is there any announcements before we dismiss the service tonight?
Jim Bolger, they had to get a new vehicle, and they didn't quite get their lift.
Oh.
That's reading out here tonight.
Okay, all right. They'll be in good shape whenever they get all transferred, won't they?
I had to get a new one.
All right. If there's no announcements, we'll be dismissed, and I hope everyone has a great remainder of the week. And remember these that have asked us to remember them in prayer. And so we'll go ahead then and be dismissed, all right? Terry, would you dismiss us?